The Treaty of Versailles, a major 20th century turning point, changed world history by ending World War I and was a contributing factor to the onset of World War II. World War I changed the lives of everyone that was involved. During my trip to Paris, I went on a day trip to the Palace of Versailles. I was able to see the Hall of Mirrors where the peace treaty was signed. I also found a new respect for my great-uncle Elmer Shaw Wright from Plympton, Massachusetts, who served in World War I. In 1917, after the Germans torpedoed ships in the Atlantic, President Wilson asked Congress to declare war on Germany. Britain, France, Russia, and Italy were already involved in the war. All of these countries suffered great losses due to the fact that the war was fought on their land. In November 1918, the German armistice stopped the hostilities between the Allies and the Germans. It was the first hope of peace for the end of World War I. On December 29, 1918, Elmer Shaw Wright wrote to his parents telling them that President Wilson, President Poincaré, Marshal Foch, Marshal Joffre, General Pershing, and Secretary Lansing had arrived in Paris. Quote, I saw the president when he arrived in Paris, and he sure got some reception. We had a half day off and were carried in trucks down to the Bois de Boulogne, which is the street near the station where he arrived. As far as the eye could reach, the streets were lined with French troops, and in back of them were thousands of Parisians. In front of where we stood were the famous chasseurs alpins, the most famous fighters of the French armies. There were some of them came to Devens, you know, when we were there. It was a sight I would probably never see again in my life. In the first carriage was President Wilson and President Poincaré. After him came Marshal Foch and Marshal Joffre, and then General Pershing. Secretary Lansing was also in one carriage. End of quote. President Wilson and the others had come to Paris to meet as a group known as the Council of Ten. This group met to decide the terms of the peace treaty with Germany. The group consisted of 2 representatives from Britain, France, Italy, Japan, and the United States. A few months later, in March 1919, this group was replaced by the Council of Four. The Council of Four consisted of Lloyd George from Britain, George Clemenceau from France, Woodrow Wilson from the United States, and Vittorio Orlando from Italy. Later this group was replaced by the Big Three, which had the same representatives, excluding Italy. The members of the council went into the peace conferences with different opinions about what should be included and edited from the treaty. President Wilson wanted the treaty to include his 14 points and create a League of Nations. Later this idea and the treaty itself were rejected by the United States Senate. The United States never joined the League of Nations. This destroyed Wilson's plan for the League to be the cornerstone for worldwide collective security. Clemenceau wanted security for France and wanted the Germans to pay the Allies reparations. Lloyd George wanted to make sure that by the end of the conference, Britain had secure naval and colonial assets at Germany's expense. The peace treaty also covered matters about self-determination, the idea that national groups should have their own government. For example, Germany's new borders, as set by the treaty, placed many German-speaking people under the rule of other countries. Italy, Romania, and Greece had been made promises by the Big Three that were not kept. These issues made tensions higher in the conferences. The treaty also made new countries such as Czechoslovakia, Poland, Yugoslavia, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Finland. As a result of being on the losing side of the war, Turkey had its empire greatly reduced. Germany Germany suffered great losses from the peace treaty's terms. Germany lost 13% of its territory and was split by the Polish corridor. With the loss of land, Germany also lost 10% of its natural resources. The treaty didn't settle the total amount of reparations due until 1921. The treaty also contained a war guilt clause that put full responsibility for the war on Germany. All the German colonies were distributed to the Allied countries. Germany had been defeated but remained strong, restoring the balance of power among European nations. Hitler, in the post-war period, exploited these terms of the settlement to gain prominence in Germany. He encouraged a feeling of nationalism and a desire among the German people to regain the land they had lost. This helped the Nazis achieve political power, setting the stage for World War II. After reading the finished treaty, the French General Marshal Foch thought that there might be another war. He said, "This is not peace, it is an armistice for 20 years. World War II began exactly 20 years after he said this. Not only did political boundaries and leaders suffer, but the soldiers that contributed their time and energy had their lives changed forever. People like my great-uncle Elmer enlisted in the army unprepared for the upcoming horrific events they would encounter. He expresses this in one of his letters home. Quote, "Near a place called Belleau Woods, about 90 kilometers from Paris, is a woods, or rather it was a woods once, called Belleau Woods. It was here that the boys of our own 26th Division, aided by the Marines and French, turned the tide that ended in victory. I wish you could visit that place. There is not a tree or a bush that is not cut off or gashed by bullet or shell, and although the fight occurred almost a year ago, there are still laying around unexploded shells, parts of American and German uniforms, all of which tells a story better than words. What a terrific fight was put up there. I hope that fortune will favor you so that sometime you can come over here and see this Gettysburg of France, and the words that Lincoln spoke at Gettysburg are never more forcible than when applied to Belleau Woods. I think that most of us have learned something for being over here. If nothing more, it has shown me the results of war upon a nation. History shows us the results, but we have seen with our own eyes that no matter how high a nation may rise in development and education, a big war will ruin it forever, and it is the duty of man who has been over here in the American Expeditionary Forces to try to keep America from going down the same way as all the other great nations have gone since the world began." End quote.
Black cloth and I put it over a table and I took my father's video camera and put it down here's part, talks about how I have had a chance to see some of the sights in Paris. On Sunday, I visited Napoleon's tomb and the famous Notre Dame church. I'm living about 5 minutes walk from the historic Bastille and the Louvre, and it's about 10 minutes ride from there. And he talks about Howard Ethel and the baby, which that one was Uncle Bo, was it? Yeah, Uncle Boger, grandfather Wright's son. And he talks about, I suppose he will be some boy when I see him again. Can he walk yet? And have you been down home much lately? How are all the folks? I suppose we're all snowed under now. There's no snow here to speak of, but there's plenty of damp, rainy weather, which if a whole lot worse. We see the sun so seldom that when it does come out, they put it in the paper. Give my love. And talks. Let's see. Dear, this is July 15th, and he's somewhere in France. And he writes, Dear Father and Mother, probably you've been anxiously waiting to hear from me. I'm well and am seeing new things every day. We had a smooth trip across the ocean, and I was not seasick at all, although it took me 2 or 3 days to get used to the motion of the boat. We were in England 2 or 3 days, and while there I visited one of those old English cathedrals. It was worth seeing. It is claimed that King Alfred used to attend service at the cathedral, and in the cathedral there was a slate slab marking the burial place of Jane Austen. I'm sending home one of Edith's pictures. She sent me two to choose from and requested that I send the other to you. I received it in the mail before I left Camp Devens, so did not get a chance to send it the day we left U.S. I want to keep one of them in good shape if possible, too, because a soldier's life is not very good for keeping photos in good condition. One thing that is most noticeable about the farms in England is that they're almost mathematical exactness and that they are laid out. Everything looks so green and pretty that it doesn't seem possible that there is a war going on only a few miles away. They have rain pretty nearly every day, and so they do not have the droughts that we have sometimes in America. One thing that is very noticeable in England is that the houses are all made of brick. I was talking to an Englishman, and he told me that it is against the law to make wooden houses, and that wood is not very plentiful in England. You've probably seen pictures of English trains. The engines are about 1/2 as large as our smallest ones in America, and the cars have doors on the sides which are divided into compartments. It is fun to ride on them, though, for they travel fast, and the pretty scenery of the country makes it interesting. Tunnels seem a matter of course in England, so we went through a number of them. Talks about not to worry about him, and that there are thousands of young fellows that have been over here much longer than he has, and that they have a husky bunch of fellows as we wish to see. I think this was only a small portion of the letters he actually wrote. My grandmother was telling me that enough over there in spring, but it is clean mud, if such a thing is possible. It does not stick to your feet like the proverbial death of the diseased African, as this does. I used to smile when I read letters some fellows wrote while we were in the States about the French mud, but then ignorance was bliss, and as I told Edith, I am considerably wiser in some ways than when I came over here, although there is still lots of room for improvement. I guess I'm a little more to enjoy the mud when we're in England. I've been able to buy some milk about every day for a while since I've been in this town, and I can have my old favorite bread and milk. This is a farming district, and they have some of the finest looking cows I ever saw. I'm not much of a cow enthusiast, but I can see that these are extraordinary ones. They're great cream-colored cows. I do not know the breed. And you talked about hearing about Spanish influenza coming over southern Massachusetts. This is another letter from Uncle Elmer. He was with the American Expeditionary Force, and it's written to his brother. Let's see. Oh, this is interesting. I saw a fellow named Bartlett one day and thought for a moment that I found one of Ethel's brothers, but this was another Bartlett, who ran some of the same last name as one of my great-grandmother's brothers, coincidentally, in France. Let's see. We have a rather peculiar institution in the Army that labors under the good phenomenon of Joe Latrine. When a startling rumor about anything happens, it is inevitably traced to Joe, and I can tell you the more rumors are flowing around here now than there are bullets. Probably there are plenty in the States too. Then there was one of his letters was actually published in the newspaper. That's part of the feelings about the war, which was very helpful too when I did my video and when I talked about the war. And he talks about, how he'd like to see Uncle Bulger, his nephew, how he probably can talk and walk and everything. This is another letter to his brother Gene and Gene's wife Ethel. Let's see, it's been quite a while since I have written to you. I cannot write when I do not feel like it, and tonight is the first time I have had an inspiration for a long time. I say inspiration, and it is in a way, for last Sunday I took a trip to Below Woods and Chateau d'Arey in an auto, and the things I saw there I will never forget. And this is where he talks about Below Woods. I also included in my own video. Near a place called Below, about 90 kilometers from Paris, is a woods, or rather it was a woods once called Below Woods. It was here that the boys of our own 26th Division, aided by the Marines and French, turned the tide that ended in victory. I wish you could visit that place. There's not a tree or a bush that is cut off or gashed by a bullet or shell, and although the fight occurred almost a year ago, there are still laying around unexploited shells, parts of American and German uniforms, all of which tell the story better than words. What a terrific fight was put up there. The field in front of the woods is literally covered with shell holes, and the few houses near the woods are in ruins. In two small squares, about 100 yards from the woods, on the road leading from Chateau d'Arey, are the graves of some of our boys who fell there. Most of them are New England boys of the 26th Division. Rich grave has a wooden cross with a round dish about 8 inches in diameter with the stars and stripes on it. Below that is a tag showing the name, number, and regiment of the soldier buried there. They are not all buried there, of course. Some are buried in the shell holes in the woods and fields. Some have never been found, but are, quote, none among the gallant living, none among the silent dead, none among the wounded, missing, that is what the message read. I'm not trying to be dramatic. I'm trying to express some of the emotions I felt as I looked over the battlefield. And as if to mock those silent graves are some barracks a few feet from them with some German prisoners in them. Individually, of course, they are not to blame, but are there because men have not yet become educated enough to stop killing their brothers. The town of Chateau d'Arey is scarred up almost as badly. Buildings are in ruins, and the houses are all more or less scarred with bullets. I hope that fortune will favor you so that sometime you can come over here and see this Gettysburg of France, and the words that Lincoln spoke at Gettysburg are never more forcible when applied to Below Woods. I suppose we're all busy with the gardens now. Everything is all leaved out and in bloom over here, although it's been pretty cool up to a couple of days ago. I've been prompt recently and am now first sergeant of APS, which gives me increasing pay. And he says, I see that the Boston teams are playing in their usual way, the Americans near the top and the Nationals near the bottom. Here's hoping you both are in the best of health, and I almost forgot to ask about the baby. I'll bet the air got agreed with him better than that of Chelsea. That was his joke between him and his brother. That was very interesting. We talked about Below Woods and referring to Gettysburg. I mean, wow. I don't think I would ever have been able to make such an amazing connection to seeing that. I mean, one can only imagine what he felt. Let's see. Oh, he talks about, well, I've begun to see the horizon of the going home period. We're having a bunch of replacements coming in pretty soon of enlisted and re-enlisted men from the States. And I've made a bid to be put on the surplus list, which is the list that is made up of men to go home as soon as their services can be spared. And my company said that as soon as I could find a man to take my place, he would let me go. So that's one of the important things he touches on. He talks about how Americans are getting pretty scarce over here. A while ago, we took a stroll on the Laissez Boulevard and see almost as many Yanks as frogs, but nowadays there are not too many. So, and he talks about in the papers that he sees the riots going on in Chicago, which was interesting. They said there's bound to be a racial war over there sometime, soon as the Negroes think that they are strong enough and they are as well educated and as fine, they're strong enough, they will fight back. They will rebel. That was a predecessor to the civil rights movement. He said, they are people and they are as well educated and as fine as we are. So I thought that was interesting too. He predicted the future. Not only was he talking about the past, but talking about the future as well. He's talking about Paris is settling down into everyday life nowadays. Now the 14th of July is French Independence Day. And it says, a little over a year ago this time we were to show you the letters. I'm donating them to the Plimpton Historical Society, because I'm sure Uncle Elmer would have wanted that, and I think that's what should be done. These are the actual letters that he wrote home. And some of them were very hard to pick out his handwriting, but it's amazing they were kept up in such great condition, sitting in my grandmother's basement. Well, grandmother writes, that's true. This is the letter that's published.
Why was that published? What's significant?
I don't know why it was published, actually.
I don't know.
I really don't. This is a trip to the 76th Division. The following letter was written by Sergeant Elmer S. Wright of Plimpton to his father on Father's Day, November 24th. Sergeant Wright, who was 26 years of age, was employed at Boston when he left for Camp Devens and was placed in the Old Colony Division. And he was the 76th Division until a few days before the signing of the armistice. His letters, in a brief way, gave a history of the division. I think that it was because he wrote his letter on Father's Day, and also talked. He gave so much. I mean, he really did give a lot of history in his letters. I mean, quotes and describing things so detailed, and even the mud and the cows that he included. And, I mean, that was amazing too. So there also, I mean, we even had some envelopes. I mean, this envelope traveled all over Europe trying to find Uncle Elmer. I don't think they ever, not sure they ever